Welcome, guys, to our newest panel. This panel brought to you by the new NUSM 460 Associates of Neumann University. This is Emerging Leaders in Sports.
Hello, all. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come and talk. I'm the first bullet. So I'm Bethany Lang. I'm the Assistant Director of Athletics for Academic Success and Community Engagement at Chestnut Hill College.
I'm Nicole D'Angelo. I'm the marketing coordinator for the Valley Forge Casino Resort. I'm in charge of all the social media, maintaining all the digital platforms, reputation management, and the website.
Hey guys, I'm Shelly Phillips here. I am the Group Sales and Hospitality Executive for Phoenix Raceway and NASCAR. I oversee all of our large tour groups that come around from out of state, as well as a ticket purchase of 20 or more.
Hey guys, Brandon Hopper, graduated Neumann in 2016. I currently work for the Philadelphia Union as a fan service representative. Kind of oversee 600 to 700 season ticket members. And also, on a personal note, I just got accepted into the Westchester graduate program, going back to get my master's in public admin with a concentration in sport management.
Hi everyone, my name is Courtney Curcio. I am currently the foundation coordinator for the Philadelphia PGA under their foundation for PGA Reach Philadelphia. I basically do all of their admin, programming, social, sponsorship, a little bit of everything under my role as their foundation coordinator.
All right, I'm Tim Zinzel. I'm an athletic academic advisor at Delaware State University. I currently oversee about 115 student athletes and their academic success. So,
thank you for the quick intro, guys. I'm Dennis. I'll be one of the moderators, and I'm joined by my classmate, Tom Van Horn. And we're kind of going to jump right into things. Talk about the importance of networking before and after graduation and keeping up with your network now.
I guess I could go. So, or whoever wants to go first, but I graduated in 2015. So I was the original class of the SEM at Neumann. And so I would say the best advice or importance of networking is just to network with as many people as you can. As you guys can see at Neumann, from just this panel and just having it grow to 100 different people, even though Neumann's such a small school, those connections can go across the country so easily. So before graduation, I would say even every college campus is really important to know. I networked with institutional advancement before I left. I tried to network with athletics. I tried to network with my coach when I was a student athlete there. So I think it really depends on where you want to go, but everybody has some purpose, I think, in your life, especially right before you graduate, because that's the best time. So that's all I have to say.
I'd say keeping those relationships is a huge part of networking. Even if you reach out to somebody and say hi once, doesn't mean that they know you and that you're friends with them or that you are part of their network. You need to maintain those relationships and make sure that you're continuing it and not just asking them for favors every time you reach out, especially in the sports industry. Everybody knows everybody. So if you're just reaching out to somebody for specific things, it can kind of ruin your relationships with people. So make sure that you're staying active with the networking that you are a part of.
Yeah, I can kind of jump in here too as well. I think the importance of, I mean, I've said this at a couple classes that I've spoken to at Neumann, networking with your classmates too is really, really important. So I graduated in 2016. I kind of bounced around a couple gyms, working as just front desk, personal training. And then one of my friends that I had made at Neumann, Julia Mulseed, who I also was friends with in high school, she had helped me get my foot in the door at the union. And kind of without that contact, I wouldn't have been able to get in and move up as quickly as I did. So, I mean, Dr. J, when she came in, the first thing that I remember her saying is, how well do you know your classmates? And I think that taking that seriously and getting to know them, because obviously you see all of us were NU SEM participants, and we work all over the globe here. So networking with your classmates as well as other business professionals, to me, is really important, and it's kind of helped me get to where I am right now.
Yeah, Brandon, like you alluded to, networking with like your classmates, but also once you're in that position, always networking around the sports industry. It's actually helped me get to my position. Right after graduation in 2017, I actually got a job with the Phoenix Suns. When I was at the Phoenix Suns, I held an account here for NASCAR and Phoenix Raceway. And, NASCAR has been a really big passion of mine and my family. So just kept a good contact with that contact who came out to the Phoenix Suns game. And that's actually how I grew into the position where I am today in group sales. It was just an odd thing where they were looking for a position to fill. And, since I networked with the right people, it just kind of helped me grow along the way.
Yeah, you guys all mentioned really great things that I kind of would like to piggyback on. I mean, you guys hit on a lot of things like Bethany talking about building the network. You never know who's going to know someone that you're talking to or how they're going to help further your career. But Courtney brought up a great thing. It's not just establishing the network. It's about following up and continuing those relationships, because we know how much point contact we have with everyone on a daily basis. But making sure you're not reaching out to them just when you need something, but actually developing an actual relationship with them, so that when something does pop up, they think of you not just as that person that's always bothering them, but being able to talk about other things. So it's something that I've worked on every couple months, checking in with my previous mentors or supervisors, seeing how things are going, just talking about life and other things to make sure that we keep those relationships going forward. And it's great to see how they're expanding with or without us.
That is all good insight. I just want to remind the audience, if you guys have any questions, you guys can type in the chat box. We will try and get to them as best as we can. I'm going to ask you guys another question. It's about interview tips. Can you guys walk us through the process of what it was like applying for a job once you graduated college, and what you guys now, since you're on the other side, look for in an intern application?
I'll start with this one. I think the biggest advice I ever got was to never go into an interview sounding too much like a fan. Of course, like, you're in sports because you like it, but especially when I was hiring interns, I really would watch the specific interns that would be like, oh, I love hockey, I'm such a big fan. And you don't want to hire a fan. If I wanted to hire a fan, I would go out to the stands and hire one. So I think just kind of maintaining that you want to work and then you want to learn, and being a fan only gets you so far.
Yeah, Nicole, that's great. I actually did the Coyotes career fair when I first started. I had to look for some of our inside sales reps in NASCAR. So being in NASCAR, it's not, one of the elite four. It's not like basketball. It's not baseball. It's not hockey, soccer, football. It's not anything like that. We do left turns all day. We crash. You would think it's the stereotypical NASCAR thing. So when people would come up and be like, oh, I love NASCAR, I kind of brushed them off, but I really didn't. I really wanted the students that came up to me and was like, what's NASCAR? What's Phoenix Raceway? Because they were actually interested in learning. It was pretty funny the person that I hired is actually my counterpart now. So it was funny to see his growth and see where he's going to be soon.
Yeah, I think I could take it from here. You guys made some great points. One of the interviewing tips that I've found to be really, really helppful is to have 3 or 4 really good questions at the end that you've thought of, that you've written down. Always come prepared. Bring a notebook to see that this kid actually came prepared. And one of the best questions and advice that I've ever gotten. If you're looking to go into a sales role, the biggest thing in sales is handling objections and being able to do that. So at the end of every interview, if I'm interviewing for sales, I kind of ask them, what would be holding you back from hiring me from this position? It shows that you're ready to take on an objection and then handle that. And it's really, really helpful. And I've gotten only good feedback from interviewing from salespeople on that question. So it's just kind of a little tidbit that I've found to help me in the interviewing process. If you're interviewing for sales and any other position, honestly, it kind of lets you hear kind of some of the things that would be keeping you back from hiring them, whether you could work on that or work on it from the next interview. Just kind of hearing that feedback and being able to deal well with constructive criticism at the end of the interview, I think is a good skill to have.
Just to piggy off that, some interview tips, and I kind of wrote them down, that I used actually when I was going from undergrad and also my master's, is research. Research like it's actually your job. Because you don't want to go into an interview, especially like just working in college athletics. You're interviewing with the president sometimes in some position. You're interviewing with the head athletic director, other constituents at the college. You have to know more about that college sometimes than the people in that room. And I think just one of the questions that they said, what skills are identified in the sports industry, especially in college athletics, it does help that if you were a former athlete, just to see where the students are actually coming from, but actually having the drive, know what the students are dealing with. Because I think also what I've noticed too when people interview with myself is the type of questions they're asking. Because usually the type of questions that people are asking means that they have a problem or maybe something that has been brought up at that college. Does that make sense? So I think that's also, like just interviewing and know who is also in your interview. So this sounds, I guess, not creepy, but I think I've used LinkedIn and I've actually typed in Chestnut Hill College and then I see who my connections are. So even my first, second, and third connections, I'm like, wait, that person's actually in my interview. And so that actually happened from my position at Chestnut Hill. And I found from 5 years ago that my building coordinator was actually going to be one of the people that was interviewing me for this position. So I think that's something really important to also, piggy off of. So, yeah.
I think another big one too is I think they touched on this in yesterday's session, is social media. I don't think I can stress this enough, how especially those who work with social media, I can get into anything I want to. So I can see what you do, kind of how you carry yourself and what your social media looks like. Because I had an instance where I had someone who wanted to be an intern who was for the Reading Royals. He was a super fan, and he would go on after every game and he would just trash talk the team on social media. And there was just like, there's no room for that. So if you are applying to say like the Flyers or someone that you do watch and you get a little upset with what's going on in the game, just kind of keep it to yourself because they're watching.
We had a question come in from the audience. What are some skills that you guys have identified that employers in the sports industry look for the most?
I'll go first on this one, I guess. Especially in my field for working with student athletes, there's a level of trust and honesty that is huge in our field because we work in, depending on the university, usually depends on the access you have to each student athlete's account. So there's certain FERPA forms you have to fill out because you're privy to pretty much student athletes' information on a wholesale level, and being sensitive with that information and making sure that they can trust you. You're not going to violate any rules and you're going to operate in the most honest way possible and not kind of violate any rules, because some of the rules may seem ridiculous that we hear about, but there's a reason that those rules are in place because someone did something they weren't supposed to. So it's I know when I usually bring that up when I was talking to people, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Or talking about what we value as characteristics that we look at in job candidates or interns. a sense of morality or a heavy focus on ethics is something that I value very highly.
So I can speak to this from the ticket sales perspective. Competitiveness. You want to in your interview, they're looking for people who are going to be competitive. They're looking for people who are going to come in, grind, work hard, and want to be at the top of the leaderboard. It's funny. We were interviewing somebody for an internship in the ticket sales department, and we asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, how competitive would you say you are? Or if there's a leaderboard of like 15, 20 people, where would you want to see yourself in that leaderboard? And it blows my mind sometimes to hear people say like, oh, right in the middle, or, my competitiveness is like a 6 or 7 out of 10. And it's just like, that's crazy to me, because if you're going into ticket sales for the competitive nature and it's sports, to me, that's the number one kind of characteristic or skill that at least ticket sales people are looking for. It's looking for someone that's going to come in, they're going to grind, and they're going to have that competitiveness to be at the top of the leaderboard. Because if you have that drive in sports and ticket sales in general, that drive is going to only help you. Even if you go in and you just grind and grind and grind, sometimes ticket sales, sometimes it's not your day, but to be able to put in that work and have that mindset to want to be at the top, I think that you need to convey that as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, to piggyback off that a little bit, Brandon, working in ticket sales, competitiveness is probably, I would say, one of the top 3. But you also want to be coachable. So, those student athletes, you guys are working through 4 years of being coached. You're never going to stop being coached. You always want to, learn how to adapt. You want to stay positive too, because like Brandon alluded to, you might hear 100 no's, but that 101st yes might be a $50,000 deal and you'll have no idea. So, keeping positive, and also in sports, it can get a little taxing. So always having, a good support system behind you. I know when I was being interviewed with the Phoenix Suns, I was in an interview class of probably 200 to 300 people. And then we got weeded out from there down to, 100, down to 50, down to 10, down to 5, down to 3. So I was an incoming class of maybe 12. My top skills was coachability. I wasn't the best salesperson, but I came out on top. I was competitive. I stayed positive throughout the whole thing. And here I am today, still in sales.
I think just to piggy off that, I think a lot of what everyone's kind of talking about is to have grit, to have that kind of drive, because there's a lot of people applying for the job that you're going to, whether you want to realize that or not. I think that's what you have to keep going. And no matter what, I think the most valuable thing that I learned in college is to not give up. Find those people, find those administrators, at your college, like Dr. J, who will be supporting you no matter where you go, because those are the people who will be your backbone in the hardest times and the best times, right? So I think that's also valuable. And I think we also touched about intern applications, and I just want to say that I used to hire a lot of student workers and interns. I used to oversee 150 at Texas A&M, and the thing that you have to realize too is that they're a representation of you. So if your tutor is helping someone cheat, for example, if for an athlete, that's huge in academics. That is a huge no-no. So there's a lot of things like you have to kind of put in perspective, and to not exactly mold them into the person that you are, because I think it's beneficial to have an intern that will help you in ways that maybe you're not as strong in. But just to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, like what would I want to like be later down the road, and so how is this opportunity going to help me, and how is this internship is it going to give me more work to do, or is it going to give me less work to do? Because that's overall what I look for as an intern.
So the next 2 questions kind of piggyback off of each other. The first question is, what would be a good way to follow up with someone that you've had an informational interview with to begin developing, maintaining a relationship with them? And then the second one piggybacks off of that. They said, what is the best way to maintain a connection with that person when there's no current purpose or drive to communicate with them?
I think I can talk about this first. I think LinkedIn is a huge benefit for our industry and any industry in general. I mean, we're constantly getting notifications if somebody's gotten a new job, and you can contact them to congratulate them or just reach out to them and say, hey, how are things going? I know that you've been there for such and such time. I think there's always a way and a reason to reach out to somebody. You can say, I'm working on a project and I want your input on something, or I met somebody that knows you. I think there's always a way and there's always a reason to reach out to somebody. It doesn't have to be a specific thing. If you want to reach out to them, I think that you can come up with some type of reason to talk to them if you're willing to.
I had myself muted there. I forgot to unmute myself. But following up after an interview, an email right away is always a good call. Just say, hey, thanks for taking a few minutes to chat. Really enjoyed, coming down to talk to you guys. Looking forward to hearing from you soon. And I know I'll probably say this, and another, everyone else can back me up on this. A handwritten note goes a long, long way to just show that you want to go above and kind of beyond and show that you're dedicated and things like that. I know on a couple interviews that I had, a handwritten note, it gets talked about in the office, and you'll be remembered. I think that's a really good way to follow up and cap off the whole interview. An email saying, hey, thanks for taking time. Look forward to hearing from you soon. And then just a handwritten note as well. It gives that little extra touch.
We have another question. What is some valuable information you learned throughout college that you feel has helped you a lot in your professional life?
It's okay to fail. I would say that is the most valuable information I have ever heard, because when I graduated graduate school, I applied to 300 jobs. 300. I heard back from like 10. And I had 5 internships in athletics, and I had a grad assistantship doing academic support services, and I was a part-time coach. So I was like, okay, I'm doing everything right. I think eventually it does fall into place, but I think that's the most valuable information I've had.
I guess I'll go next. I guess what Neumann especially taught me was sometimes, and this may not be the best presentation, but it's sometimes you don't think you're where you're supposed to be at, but then looking back on it, it was the perfect opportunity and spot for you, especially my last job. It was a lot more than I was anticipating, but it would just kind of put your nose to the grindstone and grind, like a lot of us were talking about earlier. And now I joke around a lot because I'm very self-reflective looking back where I am at Del State now as opposed to where I was last year at this time. I was like, I'm in a different job. I'm not as exhausted because I worked my way through the previous position and I got a promotion in my next job, which is hopefully the goal in everyone's next job when they move on. So it's a little bit less responsibility in the office, kind of. There's other supervisory roles, but it's nice to have a better balance. And I didn't have that. I was working last year this time, probably 60, 65 hours a week at a small school, a staff of 3, as opposed to now I have a staff of 7 that I work with. So it's a lot better setup for me. And I didn't know, and it was tough being far away from family and grinding away on my own like that. But it was exactly what I needed. Even though I didn't know that, it's exactly what I needed, and now I'm flourishing because of that. So sometimes just taking the opportunity, not knowing, just jumping feet first into it, and then it's going to end up benefiting you in the end.
I would say the biggest thing that I took away from Neumann is, I guess, kind of why we're all here. Networking. I think networking, it probably gets redundant. Everybody hears about it, network. But I mean, building and maintaining relationships and networking and meeting other people. I mean, you can use that in any job that you get for instance, my job is to literally keep relationships with season ticket members. I learned that from Dr. J, from networking with people. I have some contacts at Westchester now through networking with people, helped me get into the graduate program. I would probably say far and above the biggest thing that I've learned at Neumann is the power of actually networking and getting to know people. People say, oh, sports is everybody knows everybody, but literally everybody knows everybody. It's crazy. You know somebody, they know somebody. You're going to be able to find a connection in sports if you want to. I would say just keeping that emphasis on networking.
So the next question, I assume you guys all work in sports. I assume you guys are fans in some regard. So the next question is, how hard is it to work in the sports industry while trying to control your inner fan?
I can take this one. Of course, you know, you have your favorites. Especially, I think if you're lucky enough to get an internship where you are exposed to the players, the starstruck fades real quick. You'll notice that they're normal people. A lot of the guys, they just want to play hockey and go home. I'm not sure about other athletes, but out of my experiences, they honestly, if you saw them on the street, I don't think you would know who they were. But you just kind of have to just control it. And the more you're around them, the less exciting they are.
I could actually answer this pretty good. I am one of the biggest Eagles fans you guys will probably ever meet. I have actually an Eagles tattoo on my forearm. I would never, ever, ever even dream about interviewing for the Eagles, because being able to take yourself away from that stuff, if you're a big fan, like a huge, huge fan of a team, I wouldn't even go near that team. Personally, me personally, working for the Eagles, I wouldn't be able to remove myself as a fan. And I think knowing that and being self-aware of that is really, really important. It's tough. Seeing the players around, it's cool. But being able to stay composed and stuff like that is important. But yeah, I mean, working at the Eagles, I don't know if I could, Eagles, Sixers, that kind of thing. I don't know if I'd be able to remove myself and being self-aware of that. You guys know yourselves better than I do, but removing yourself from being a fan, yeah, I think that's pretty tough, but it's something that you have to do.
Yeah. Oh, you can go,
Sorry,
Court.
Shelly. I think when you're around your sport that you're in enough, that the part of you being a fan and the part of you actually working, it comes apart, and you almost don't become that fan anymore, because it is, I mean, it's sad to say that, but it's your job. It's your job for other people to be fans and for other people to enjoy it. And you sit back and enjoy the other sports that you're not working with. Being that I work in the golf industry, it's a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, don't you play golf all the time? Don't you love it? And I say, actually, once you work in a certain sport, you're not as involved personally as you are on now your professional side. So I think it's easy once you get into a position that you have to be professional about, and for you to remove yourself as a fan and really push yourself in your professional career to be that type of person.
Yeah, maybe I can do a devil's advocate here. I'm a huge NASCAR fan, you know, undercover, like underneath, way down deep, huge NASCAR fan, probably my favorite sport of all time, if you even want to count it a sport. But working in the industry, like Courtney said, you're just so used to it. I see drivers all the time when they come into market. You know, I can probably call up, you know, William Byron or a few other drivers right now and be like, hey, how's it going? But, you know, just knowing that they're a person, and for me in my position, giving a lot of our larger groups the opportunity to attend their first NASCAR race and possibly become a fan is what really drives me and kind of what pulls me away from being a fan versus this is my job. So that's a little bit of the devil's advocate there. I'll always be a fan, but it, when it comes down to it, you're in your job, you're in your role for a reason. We just kind of, you kind of have to have that balance a little bit.
So our next question is a little lengthy, so bear with me. Hi friends, working in sports can bring about frequent turnover or realizing your job doesn't quite fit your expectations. What advice do you have for students who get their first job out of college and think they would like to maybe transfer out of sales into operations or think about going into a different career direction?
I'll take this one. Especially because the person who wrote in is actually the reason why I'm in the casino industry. When I first graduated school, I didn't have a job lined up or anything, so I kind of begged I was doing internships with the Flyers, so I kind of begged my boss to let me stay another year even though I wasn't in school, and after some convincing, he let me. But my first job opportunity, the first job I was offered was a ticket sales for the Florida Panthers. I took it and I thought about it, and eventually I never went. So luckily, a few months later, I was hired by the Royals for what I really wanted to do, which was social media and PR. But when you go from the majors, the NHL, to the ECHL, which is another league below the Flyers, it's a whole different world. And, the location of the stadium, over a while, it just, sports didn't really fit into what I loved anymore. So once I took a break, and then I tried to figure out where to go from there. And Colleen actually had worked at another casino. Was it Harrah's, Colleen? I don't know. But she had mentioned that it's literally the same thing as being in sports. It's just not as demanding on you. And so I actually got into the casino business because of her.
And then going off that, I know all you guys have worked or work in the sports industry and some on the entertainment side as well. If you guys want to talk about the entertainment industry in comparison with sports.
It is a different world, but it's still the same in the same aspect of, you're trying to, so for like the casino, for example, we're trying to put bodies in the casino. We want people playing slot machines, just like in sports. You want people in the seats, you want them spending money, you want them engaged with your brand. And it's the same thing in, the casino world. I think the biggest difference was, especially in sports, you go so strong for like 6 months or maybe less, and then you kind of like fade out into the summer, whereas the casino, it never closes. Well, except now. But it's you're constantly trying to figure out new ways to get people in the door, spending money. The biggest challenge I would say for the casinos is we have, an older age gap than compared to like sports when it's kind of like younger. So it's very similar in an aspect of like with the kind of events that we're throwing. When you're throwing events at the Flyers or something, it was always the same kind of setup. Any entertainment that comes in, handling the artists, it's the same thing as like handling any of the athletes. So it's very similar. And my boss had actually told me she hired me because I came from the sports industry. So that's actually a big reason.
Okay, so the next question is for Shelly. How has living and working in Arizona changed your outlook on the industry, and how everything is compared to living and working in Pennsylvania.
Oh boy. Well, I will say Arizona is like an oven in the summers, 120 plus. It's great. Just kidding. I guess you could say Arizona and the Southwest, possibly the Southwest in general, is a little bit slower pace than, I would say the Northeast was. You'll see, a lot of snowbirds, we call them, where people come from Canada, people come from the East, and they have their vacation homes out here. So a lot of our sports and, a lot of our sales kind of comes in waves. You'll see a high uptick from November to March. And then once the summer months kind of kick in and the first week of hundreds start, you'll see a lot of the sports kind of fall out and be more of a local market. How it differs compared to Pennsylvania, besides it being, 100 degrees for 6-7 months straight. It's kind of similar, I guess, to working at the union. I know when I worked events at the union, during college, we were on it all the time. It's similar to Arizona where, just in the summer we move inside. It's definitely year round.
Thank you for that. This one's directed to Bethany and Tim because you guys also moved away to start your career. What made you guys decide to go away and then come back?
You can go first, Tim.
All right, cool. I wasn't sure if I was waiting on you or not. Honestly, it was just the opportunity that arose, kind of like Bethany. I don't think I applied to like 300 jobs, but I definitely applied to 80 or 90 after I got out of grad school. I didn't have a GA, but I had a good amount of internships. I was like, all right, cool. I got my master's degree. I got my internships. I'm ready to go. Like Bethany said, I did everything I was supposed to by the books. Jobs were me lining up, and then I would get sporadic replies back. Oh, we went a different way, which was fine. And then some just wouldn't reply. So you kind of just have to take the opportunity that arose. Again, friends and family were the most excited. I spent time I did my master's degree at the University of Louisville. It's Louisville, not Louisville, Kentucky. I got told that on my first day of the grad program. So if you don't want to sound like a tourist when you go there, it's a great city, absolutely beautiful. And then I went up to the University of Minnesota, which was maybe not the best idea because it was January in Minnesota. And for those that don't know, it's very cold in Minnesota. And there's no parking for interns up there. So negative 19 degrees on my first day walking to work was a little bit different of an atmosphere, a little different than what Shelly is going through. And then Louisiana offered me a position. It was the only place offered me at the time. And I was like, all right, well, let's just go. And it falls back on I trust myself. And I know that I'm going to do a good job and everything's going to fall into place the way it's supposed to. You just got to kind of trust the process a little bit. I have a huge trust the process poster in my office because I believe in that. It's got a 76ers logo entwined in it, so it's really awesome looking. I get compliments on it all the time. But it was really tough, but opportunities are sparse. And again, if you're going to do a good job, the right places are going to come find you. But it's just a matter of getting your foot in the door first. So I'm just willing to take an opportunity and take a chance on myself.
I'll second that. Just moving away. I was getting opportunities, but it wasn't what I wanted. And like there was opportunities where I was getting like a part-time job offer for 40 hours a week, but no benefits. And it was just something that was not what I knew what I was worth. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people have to realize. If you know you can do a good job, then like Tim said, the opportunities will come and find you. And I had to go all the way down to Texas, and I flew on a plane, and I had 3 suitcases, and I had to start my whole life. And it was hard. I have 3 nephews and a niece. I'm really close to my family. My brothers are my best friend. It's kind of like how we are now with this COVID-19 and watching everyone grow through pictures instead of actually being there. And, it was hard for me, but, I learned a lot about being on my own more than I ever had. And it's not like I haven't been on my own before college, but it was different because you don't have any friends or family out there. So you're pretty much just starting from the beginning and just trying to figure out, how can this place benefit you in the long run? And I put my time in. I worked at 2 different colleges. I worked at Prairie View A&M. It's a historical Black college in Texas. And then after that, I worked at Texas A&M for a year. And after that, I was like, you know what, I think it's time to go back. And that's the great thing about, I think, our industry. You can always go out there, get the experience, and always go back home. So I think that's another reason why I came home too.
The next question is for anyone. Now that you guys all work in the industry now and recently graduated, what is one thing that you know now that you wish you would have done more of when you were back in college?
I'm gonna say specifically for me and my field of marketing and PR, I wish I would have taken Photoshop a little more seriously when we had it in school, because I know I'm lucky enough where I don't have to do my own graphic designs, but when I either want to, or a lot of job descriptions ask for someone who is in a type of social media position to create their own graphics, to cut their own videos, which I can't do. So I wish that was the one thing I wish that I look back on. I'm like, I should have taken Photoshop.
Yeah, I think Dr. J will attest to this, but I was always the really quiet one in class, just kind of the undercover sniper is what they call me at work now. But I think just, learning to be myself. I am a very bubbly person. I'm a very obnoxious person, in a good way, I guess you could say. I talk a lot with my hands, as you can see. I'll be pacing around the office, but just really learning to be myself, be true to who I am, has actually helped me grow in sales and just as a person as whole, and it's kind of helped me just expand and just, I don't know, just kind of grow, I guess you could say.
And our next question came in. It's about how has COVID-19 affected your typical job description? Is it still relatively the same, or have you had to take on new tasks? What's your advice to others in similar situations?
I can start off. So we started working remotely, and it's been different. Obviously, for everyone, it's a different situation, but we're a small office. The Philadelphia PGA, we're only 9 people. The PGA of America has 41 sections, and our region covers 3 different states. So 3 different states have 3 different guidelines for the COVID-19. So constantly going through news reports and updating our professionals on what's going on. And I think that sports as a whole will come back before a lot of different organizations and industries. So I think that we're lucky on that side, but I think everything looks different for a lot of people. And for myself in particular, I think I'm busier now than I was when I was in my office. And I think a lot of people can attest to that. But it's different, but I think it's great to have on our resumes. I mean, we all went through a pandemic now.
I would agree with that as well. Just, I think since we do have more time, I think it's a great time to do things that maybe you didn't have time originally to do. So with my position, I work with student athletes over 300. I work with all sports. I'm the only person, I'm a one-man office, as you could say. So with that, I work with at-risk students to make sure that they're maintaining their grades, make sure they're turning in assignments, make sure they're doing everything they can to be eligible. I see Tim sighing as much as I am. So sometimes building the relationship that you usually would have had in person is kind of harder since it is online through FaceTime or Zoom or an office team. But the best way I try to communicate with my students is try to meet where they are. So if that's doing FaceTime, if that's creating newsletters about breaking it down with Bethany on doing how to do pass fail, I've been trying to do different types of ways to market, to just make sure I'm communicating with my students as much as I can. So I would say my job hasn't changed, but I've been trying to do different things to support or to help my students get support and making sure that they know full on what's going on, because there's only a few more weeks left in the semester.
I'll speak on the casino business right now because unfortunately, we're at a total halt. There's nothing going on. We really can't work. I see Anthony is on here, so he kind of feels my pain a little bit. Even for him in the sports book, there's no sports going on. So right now, it's kind of what everyone's going through. Like no one has any idea of what's going to happen next. So unfortunately for me, there's not much going on over here.
The next question I actually take a little bit of interest in since I'm graduating, and I'm sure Dennis does too. The next question says, do you feel it is necessary to have a master's degree to be hired within the industry and advance your career in the industry?
So since I had just got accepted into a master's program, I can try to answer this. To advance, it depends on which part of the sports industry you want to get into. I would say if you're in ticket sales, maybe not. You just have to have like being self-aware. I've said it a couple of times, being self-aware of what you want and where you want to go. But I've been at the union for 3 years now, and I'm looking to, transfer into more of a college athletics, campus recreation role. And in those type of situations, you are going to need a master's because most of those are mastered required. So I guess I would say it's kind of a gray area. It depends on where you want to be in sports. Could it hurt to get a master's? No. If you're at a job and they're going to pay you to go back to school, do it. Free education is huge. Get as much education as you can, especially if someone's going to pay for it, because I know I don't want to take on any more student loans than I have to. But yeah, I would say, kind of self-reflect and be self-aware. And if you think it's necessary and you're looking at jobs that say, hey, master's required, then get it. If not, then, you don't necessarily need it.
Yeah, just to kind of go off that a little bit more, Brandon, I graduated in 2017 with just my bachelor's. And then just kind of looping in the other question about the COVID, my role has actually switched a little bit as well, where we are working more towards a partnership role a little bit, because I'm not sure if you guys have seen on TV, but NASCAR has done this iRacing league that broadcasts on FS1 every Sunday. So since we're not physically racing at our tracks again yet, we've all just been selling on more of a partnerships and sponsorships level where, with just a bachelor's degree, I wish I paid a little bit more attention to that sports law class, because I'm starting to write a lot of contracts again. But I know my counterpart, he actually is going back to school and going to law school because his progression, he actually wants to go into more of a partnerships role. So he'll have to understand a little bit more of that legal terms, I guess you could say. That's kind of, it's up to you guys, so.
Thanks for that.
I was just gonna say real quick. I graduated in 2015. As much as I wanted to get a master's, I wanted to get into the field right away. So for me, I didn't get one. It's definitely something I'll look forward to if the opportunity ever comes up. But once you graduate and see what kind of student loans you have on you, I unfortunately decided to pass on that.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees with the student loans. But I wanted to ask you guys are all younger and work in sports, or you have worked in sports. What's a cool experience that you guys have had, maybe behind the scenes that you didn't expect, or something cool you saw that not people get to see every day? I know you touched, Nicole, about the athletes, maybe experiences with them, just to share to our audience to give them some insight.
I have a lot of memories. They're all really cool, especially when you are with the team. It's just kind of like an inside joke. I think one of the greatest things that I think worked really well with me being around the players is say like I think one of the biggest things is we're in the playoffs, or you see all these writers writing about how like the players don't care. You can see it on the ice, but no one ever saw them in the locker room or behind the scenes, you know, just really down themselves for missing that goal or whatever they wish they could have done. Once I was with the Royals, actually managing a lot of the players' schedules, it was funny to see like what you can tell, like what player likes to do certain things. And I think my favorite thing of all time was, I'm not sure if you guys know, his name's Tyrell Goulburn. He was a pick for the Flyers years ago, and he was on the Royals. And he was a big fighter. And so I would live tweet the games, so I'd be watching them, and he was on the road. And he had gotten into a fight, and he came back the next morning when they finally got in. He was like, Nicole, do you have that fight that I have that I did last night? And I was like, yeah, I have it recorded. So he sat there and he just walked me step by step on how he was getting ready to fight this guy. He was like, look, there I am. He's like, I said to that guy, I said, you messed me again, I'm going to punch you in the face. And there I go. I punched him right in the face. So like that was like my favorite. So we literally just sat there just watching his fight videos.
My story happened a couple months ago. I was like 2 months into my job at Del State. As part of my job, I mentioned the student athletes I oversee. Usually it's broken down by sports and who you're in charge of and who you oversee. Men's basketball is not one of my sports I normally oversee. And they were going on a 7-day road trip. And my boss, or supervisor, that term doesn't really bother me. Supervisor was supposed to go with them, but she wasn't able to go. So she asked me, was like, hey, they're going to ask a couple other people, but if they don't want to go, would you be willing to go on? Because a lot of people may not want to go on a week-long road trip with a bunch of men's basketball guys to make sure that they take care of their academic works, because if no one's in charge of them, then they may not do what they need to, and a week may not seem like a huge deal, but in the grand scheme of things, it can cause huge issues. So I was like, yeah, of course. It goes back to a lot of what we've talked about, is making sure that you're willing to accept any kind of responsibility or role and just be there to support the team. So my department, I was like, yeah, I'm sure, happy to go on this road trip. It just so happened actually that on this road trip, one of the teams Bell State was playing was Virginia Tech. My little brother goes to Virginia Tech, so I was actually able to cross paths with him and see him at a men's basketball game, and it was really cool to reunite him. I haven't seen him for a couple months, and it was just one of those cool little moments where sports and your life outside of sports kind of connect, and it was a really cool moment for me. I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. I get to do this. But the most life-changing moment was after the road trip. I operated study hall with them. I traveled the team. I ate with the team. I made sure they took care of their work. I reported back to make sure they're all taking care of their business. But like in the months following, I usually don't interact with the men's basketball players that much, but they would come into my office for the free candy usually, and as well as making sure that they'd be like, hey, like, when you traveling with us again? It was so cool when you traveled with us, like, and just checking in. They were coming in, having conversations with me. I was like, man, I haven't talked to these guys in like really that much. I didn't think I made that much of an impact, but it just goes to show sometimes that if you just do what you're supposed to and you don't know the impact you have on someone, and for them to open up to me about certain things was really cool. And I felt really comfortable, and it helped made me a better at my position, because I felt more comfortable at my job, that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, having that little bit of assurance from the outside to keep grinding away.
So I can take the next step here. I would say the coolest thing about working in sports, all the free stuff you get. Like you get a lot of free gear, like a lot of clothes, as well as like ticket hookups throughout the other sports teams. Like I get offered Phillies, Sixers, Flyers tickets all the time for free, so that's pretty cool. That kind of things, and you can like build the relationships in between the different teams. But now working in sports, it's pretty cool that way. You get access to a lot of cool events. A couple of people from my office go to the Sixers Foundation every year, where you get to, I think last year, I think Meek Mill performed over there. I mean, it's just cool stuff that you get access to that like kind of other people wouldn't. That's kind of the cool things that I've taken out of the job. I don't have any like cool stories about like Tim going on a road trip and stuff like that. I haven't got to go on any road trips yet. Business wise, you kind of get the company did pay for us to go down to Houston once to we were in the Open Cup final. We got to chill out in Houston for a little while, watch the game. We got our butts kicked, and it was a long flight home. But no, it's just cool stuff like that. Like you get the ticket hookups, the free gear, just other things that, you know, you wouldn't get if you didn't kind of work in sports. I think that's pretty cool.
Just picking off of both Tim and Brandon, I love working in sports. I think it's amazing. I don't regret any day. And I think that's what you have to definitely like be account for, just like waking up every day and just being happy where you are. I did go on a lot of road trips as well, just with men's basketball. My one position, I was on road for 55 days straight. Making guys we were in Hawaii and trying to convince guys in Hawaii to do study hall and to do an academic workshop was like pulling teeth. But it was, you know, after our road trip, I had a lot of guys, you know, actually when I left, say to me that, you know, I really benefited from your workshops. I know I gave you a lot of stuff in the beginning, but I actually benefited from that. And I think just like working in athletics, the free gear, working in athletics, I can see my athletes grow on the field, also in the classroom. I think that's also beneficial. And I think also like it humanizes you, right? Because sports is a very I don't know if that's a word, humanistic, I would say approach, because when things go wrong in your life, even when you have a very strong like department, your athletes and other faculty are already there for you. So just like talking in my experience, unfortunately this year my house burned down, and as soon as like that went out, the athletes wanted to come over and help rebuilding the house, you know. So like you can't really make that kind of stuff up, and I don't regret working with my athletes. I love them. They're a pain sometimes, but I think the challenges actually help us grow, you know, especially for long-term relationships.